Okay, so to finish this off, I'm going to see if there's anything else I might need. And I'm thinking I just want maybe a little spattering of red shapes. And then I might just use swatches for them, but I'll notice that that's way too strong, so I'll use the color selector to kind of tone it down. I could try to kind of steal it from the screen, but notice that that's going to be more pale than it actually is because of the overlay. But I can use that to place them maybe. Just a few well-placed little red focal points. Finishing projects in the digital arts is kind of one of the harder things because you have to wonder when is something complete, because there's always more you can do. So with the red, I wanted to show you just as I'm able to push things up through the layers, I can also push them down through layers. I can drag them lower and lower and lower. Or I can use Command left bracket. Just like Command right bracket moves them up, Command left bracket will move them down through the layers. Until eventually it's behind everything else. So now I'm doing my red accents, just duplicating and modifying again for these complex shapes, and just placing them by eye, where I think they'll be most helpful, and then pushing them down through the layers. Instead of putting them on top, layering them down underneath, behind some of the other things I've got going on. Come on. There we go. I think this will be the last one. And then I just want to show you a few more options for the backgrounds. I showed you gradation. You can have a gradated shape itself. You can have a gradated background shape, but you can also do a pattern. So your vector shapes can be more than just solid colors if that's what you desire. that suits your vision for how to make it interesting. But it's not about making it really complicated. That's not the answer. You can also use the arrow keys to move things around if you want to be, you don't want to have to zoom in all the time. You get more precise movements that way. So when can you tell when you're done? When you basically are just farting around, looking for something to work on. You might not actually be improving it towards your vision anymore. And maybe that's not the sign that you're done, but it's the sign that you should stop working on it for a while so that you can come back to it with fresh eyes. All right.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
How can you change the...
So now I'm happy with all my placements of my shapes. I'm happy with their general, orientation to each other. I'm happy with their general color, but I might want to change a flat shape into a gradient or take a gradient away from a shape. Or for instance, this shape, which is a vector shape, if I click it, it will show me the layer because I have auto select layer on. Its gradient is actually the reverse of what it is in my reference. And so I might want to try it the other way, where it's light on the inside, dark on the outside. So the way you access all of those fill options is by double clicking on the gray part of your selection of the layer. And that will get you to the effects. So they're separate than the shape options. These are the kind of fill options you can use for any layer. So they're called layer styles, but they're only going to affect that shape. So if I turn off the gradient overlay I have, I can just turn it off and have the flat color, or I can open it up and reverse it and play with its opacity, play with its color, all of that. Maybe I don't want this to be quite so strong. And I can actually change the gradient itself so that the gray doesn't extend quite as far. Like that. So you have lots and lots of control within these layer styles as well. So I want that to be really subtle. So for my background, or let's take this shape for instance. If I wanted to add a gradient to it, I would double click on the gray and then I would pick maybe the gradient overlay. And then I can pick those options and I can play with different effects, different angles, and there's a ton to play with. But you can add them to any existing layer. That might actually be helpful to have a slight gradient there. here as well. And it will remember the last options you chose, and then you can just modify from there. You can also just change the color this way too. And what I like about the color overlay is I'll always do it at a lower opacity. And that's separate from the actual shape color. It's like overriding the shape color and saying fill it with this color instead. You can use them together to get kind of effects. You can also change, like I did for the background, you don't need to have it be a radial gradient or a linear gradient. You can have these kind of different types of gradiating. So I might choose a linear one for that, and I can change the angle. And then what's neat is they show as effects right underneath your layer, and then you can just double click and access them directly to change them up. So if I wanted to reverse that gradient, I could without any difficulty. So many options. So many things to try. Yeah, I like that. All right, so for my background, I said I would show you the pattern as well. So same thing, it has a gradient overlay right now, but if I double click, I can also say pattern overlay. And then I can choose from a variety of patterns that are built in that I can augment, like this one, for instance. And I can actually import my own textures and patterns as well from different scans. But I like this halftone pattern quite a bit. So I might put that in, but then I'll use a blending mode to help blend it into what I already have. Now, does that really help match this image? No, not really. Some sort of organic pattern would do a better job. But the color is not quite right, so then I can make it more red. And there's just so many options to play with, even just with your vectors. Maybe that one's more appropriate, and then I'll need to work on my color overlay a little bit. That's too much. Now, as cool as these tools are, they can kind of get you lost in a cycle of just trying tons of things because they're a little hard to predict, the layer styles, whereas just the regular fills are a little bit easier. But they do give a lot of options for you. I might choose something like that. Or decide it was better before. And you can actually